I stood in front of the bathroom mirror that morning, staring at the woman who looked back at me. For a moment, I barely recognized her. The fine lines around my eyes seemed deeper than the day before. The grooves around my mouth more pronounced. Strands of gray threaded stubbornly through my hair, and no matter how I brushed, they caught the light. 38, I reminded myself. But the mirror told me a harsher truth. I looked closer to 45. A tired sigh slipped from my lips. Somewhere along the way, time had stolen my youth, and I hadn't noticed until it was already gone. A sharp knock rattled the bathroom door. "Mom, are you going to be much longer? Sophie needs to use the bathroom." Ashley's voice carried that impatient edge she always seemed to save for me. I glanced at the clock. 8 already. We had 40 minutes before we had to be out the door. Quickly rinsing my mouth, I opened the door. Ashley stood there with her arms crossed, her long, straight hair perfectly in place, her expression already irritated. She grabbed Sophie by the wrist and marched her inside without another word. Sophie toddled past, still half asleep, whispering a quiet thank you, only because Ashley prompted her to. I stepped aside, swallowing the sting of frustration. Ashley had been testing me more and more lately. Every word out of my mouth seemed to ignite her disdain. I tried not to let it show, but every barb she threw at me cut deeper than I wanted to admit. At breakfast, I set out bowls of oatmeal and glasses of milk. Ethan sat quietly, spoon in hand, eager to eat before school. Sophie climbed into her chair, rubbing her eyes. Ashley glanced at the table and curled her lip. "Oatmeal again. And the milk's warm. You can't even get breakfast right, Mom." I forced my voice to stay even. "It's not warm. It's straight from the fridge," she scoffed. "Sure, maybe to you it's cold, but honestly, you don't know how to make anything decent. You don't even bother with makeup. Look at yourself, you look like an old woman. Mrs. Henderson down the street is in her 40s and looks better than you ever did." The words cut like glass. I wanted to snap back, to remind her of everything I carried alone: the bills, the shifts at the hotel, the endless nights filled with laundry and homework, but I swallowed it. I'd learned long ago that arguing only made her crueler. Ethan looked up from his bowl. "Stop being mean. Mom works hard. At least we have food. You should be grateful." Ashley rolled her eyes. "Grateful? For this, for living like we're poor, for riding that junk car to school every day." Sophie watched, confused, her little hands cupping her glass of milk. "I like Mommy's oatmeal," she whispered, barely audible. The air thickened. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly, counting 2-10 in my head the way I always did when anger threatened to spill over. By the time I reached 10, the sharp urge to lash out dulled, leaving only sadness. "Finish your food," I said quietly. "We're leaving soon." Ashley shoved her bowl away with a scrape. Ethan ate dutifully, glancing at me with worried eyes. Sophie sat in silence, her legs swinging beneath her chair. Minutes later, I pushed them all out the door. The cold Scranton air bit at our cheeks as we hurried toward the old sedan. I strapped Sophie into her booster seat, checked Ethan's backpack, then slid behind the wheel. The engine coughed before it finally started, a rough reminder of how fragile everything felt. Ashley sat in the back, arms folded, staring at the houses rushing past. She wouldn't even look at me. Ethan pressed against the window, silent but loyal. Sophie hummed softly to herself, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside the car. As I steered onto the main road, I blinked back tears. My chest ached, with the weight of it all: the criticism, the loneliness, the relentless sense that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be enough. I tightened my grip on the wheel and focused on the lights ahead. The day had only just begun, but already it felt unbearable. The silence didn't last. Ashley shifted, her reflection sharp in the glass, chin raised. "Do you ever notice how everyone else's mom actually looks like they care? Mrs. Parker drops Haley off every morning in a nice SUV. She wears heels, makeup. You look like a tired maid. No wonder, Dad." She cut herself short, biting back the rest. But the words she didn't say hit harder than the ones she did. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Ashley, enough." She leaned forward between the seats. "I'm just saying you embarrass me. You don't even try. You've given up on life, and you're dragging us down with you. I hate it." Heat rose in my chest. Ethan turned toward her. "Quit it. Mom works harder than anyone. If you hate it so much, why don't you walk?" Ashley's eyes flared. "Maybe I will." I swerved the car to the shoulder. My pulse hammered. Turning to her, my voice shook but came out firm. Get out. If you're so ashamed of me, if you think you're too good to sit in this car, then walk yourself to school. For a moment, she looked stunned. Then her lips curled into a defiant smile. Fine. She yanked the door open and slammed it so hard the car rattled. Sophie burst into tears in the back seat, covering her ears. Ethan flushed red, shouting after her. But Ashley was already stomping down the sidewalk, her backpack bouncing against her shoulder. I wanted to call her back. I wanted to take the words back. But exhaustion and pride pinned me in place. With a heavy heart, I pulled away. Sophie sobbed softly. Mommy, why did you make her leave? I forced my throat to work. She wanted to go on her own. She'd be fine. She knows the way. But even to me, the words sounded empty. By the time I dropped Ethan and Sophie at school, my hands trembled on the wheel. Guilt churned through me, but I couldn't afford to collapse. My shift at the hotel started in 15 minutes, and if I was late again, my manager would have no hesitation writing me up or worse. The hotel lobby greeted me with stale coffee and forced warmth. Mrs. Cartwright, clipboard in hand, lips already tight, eyed me from behind the desk. You're cutting it close again, Linda. I know, I'm sorry. Traffic, save it. She tapped her pen. 2 complaints yesterday, wrong wake-up call, and you weren't smiling enough. This isn't a charity. If you can't keep up, there are plenty of women who'd love your spot. Her words stung, but I forced a nod and took my place at the desk. For the next hour, I moved through the motions, checking in guests, answering phones, arranging calls, while inside my mind spiraled. Ashley's angry face replayed like a reel. Sophie's tears still echoed in my ears. Mrs. Cartwright's words dug deeper into cracks already spreading inside me. By the time I stole a breath, I felt hollow. I wasn't living, I was just surviving. No safety net, no partner, no one to lean on. Just me, holding it all together with frayed strings that threatened to snap at any moment. By the end of my shift, darkness had fallen over Scranton. The December air cut sharp as I stepped outside, pulling my coat tight. My feet ached, my head throbbed, but all I could think of was Ashley. I replayed her walking away from the car, her shoulders stiff. I told myself she'd be home by now, sulking in her room like always. But when I opened the apartment door, the stillness told me otherwise. Ashley's room was dark, her bed untouched. Ethan sat at the table with homework spread out. Sophie curled on the couch with her blanket. Is Ashley back? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Ethan shook his head without looking up. I dropped my bag, heart sinking. I dialed her number. Ring after ring until it went to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. The silence felt heavier than the night itself. Sophie stirred. Mommy, why isn't Ashley home? Did she get lost? I forced a smile. She's fine, sweetheart. She's probably with a friend. She'll be home soon. But the words tasted like ash. I knew how reckless Ashley could be when she was angry. The thought of her wandering alone made my chest seize. Dinner sat untouched. Ethan picked at his food, his eyes flicking toward me. Sophie glanced at the door every few minutes as if she could will her sister home. 9 passed, then 10. I called. Again and again. Ashley, please come home. I'm sorry, just please. No answer. By 11, exhaustion crushed me. I tucked Sophie in, kissed her forehead, and promised her everything was fine. Ethan lingered in the hall, brushing my hand with his small one. She'll come back, Mom. She always does. I nodded, but tears burned behind my eyes. I didn't want him to see me break. I locked myself in the bathroom, the only place I could collapse unseen. That's when my phone lit up. A text from Ashley. My pulse jumped, relief rushing through me until I read it. I'm not coming back tonight. I don't want to live with you anymore. Stop calling me? The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. A sob broke free, echoing against the tiles. A soft knock. Mom. Ethan's small voice. Are you crying? I wiped at my face, trying to steady my breath, but when I opened the door, his worried eyes told me he already knew. He wrapped his arms around me, his head barely reaching my chest. It's okay, Mom, he whispered. We'll be okay. And, for the first time that night, I let myself cling to him, letting his fragile comfort hold me together. The next morning, my eyes burned from crying. Sophie moved slowly, half asleep, while Ethan stayed quiet, as if afraid to disturb me. Ashley's bed remained empty. After dropping them at school, I went straight to the office. The guidance counselor, Mrs. Graham, frowned when she saw me. Mrs. Thompson, I was going to call you today. Ashley hasn't been in class for 3 days. If this continues, we'll have to notify the district. You know the truancy laws. Her words twisted my stomach. Truancy meant caseworkers. Possibly Child Protective Services. The thought of strangers questioning whether I was fit as a mother terrified me. I know, I said quickly. She ran off after an argument. I'm doing everything I can. Mrs. Graham softened slightly, but her voice stayed firm. You need to find her, Linda. These situations spiral fast. I left the building with my heart pounding. My hands shook as I dialed number after number of Ashley's friends. Most didn't answer. A few claimed not to know where she was. Finally, one whispered that she was staying at a friend's but refused to say who. Ashley doesn't want you to know. Click. That night, Sophie tugged at my sleeve. Why doesn't Ashley come home? Mommy, did she stop loving us? My throat ached. She's just angry, sweetheart, but she still loves us. She'll come back. But even I didn't believe it. When Ashley finally answered my messages, her words were sharp, full of defiance. I don't need you. I'm better off on my own. Stop trying to control me. I stared at the screen, numb. What could I say? I had begged, pleaded, promised none of it. Reached her. The apartment felt colder than ever. For the first time, I wondered if I had already lost her not to strangers, but to her own pride. The days blurred. Work, school, caring for Martha, my late husband's mother, who lay bedridden in her house, across town. The air inside smelled of antiseptic and loss. She'd always had a sharp tongue, but now it came out bitter, slurred. That night, memories clawed at me. My wedding day, the years with Mark, his betrayal, the night of the accident. The officer's solemn face telling me he wasn't alone when he died, that another woman had been with him, that he'd been cheating for months. I had lost him twice, once to betrayal, then to death. Still, I cared for his mother. A cruel irony. Winter pressed down harder. The car finally broke down. A mechanic told me it would take $1,500 money I didn't have. I scraped together what little savings I'd stashed away, meant for emergencies, though every day already felt like one dot at night. I stared at the dwindling numbers in my bank account. Ethan shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. You're always so tired, Mom. I wish I could help. I forced a smile. You already do, honey, just by being you. But when he went back to bed, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. Hollow eyes, slumped shoulders. A woman stretched to her limit. Was this all I was destined for? To keep fighting battles I could never win. And yet, I had no choice. Then one Thursday evening, the door creaked open. Ashley stepped inside as if she'd never left. My heart leaped, though I forced myself not to rush her. Her chin was high, her expression guarded, but her eyes, they looked tired. I needed a break. You were suffocating me, she muttered. The words stung, but relief overpowered everything else. Sophie squealed and hugged her legs. Ashley stiffly patted her head. Ethan stayed at the table, wary. To my surprise, Ashley followed me into the kitchen. She pulled things from the fridge. You make the same boring food all the time. Let me try. I blinked, unsure whether to be grateful or offended. But when she clumsily began chopping vegetables, I stepped aside. Sophie giggled when half the carrots landed on the floor. Ethan muttered about food poisoning, though even he hid a smile. For the first time in weeks, the apartment felt alive. The food was uneven, too salty in places, underdone in others. But none of it mattered. Sophie declared it the best dinner ever because Ashley made it. Ethan teased her about burning the chicken. Even Ashley cracked a small smile. Later that night, I stood in her doorway as she scrolled on her phone. I wanted to say thank you for coming home. I missed you. Please don't leave again. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I whispered, good night. In the hallway, I pressed my hand against my chest. For the first time in months, hope flickered faintly inside me. The morning of my interview at the restaurant began under a gray sky that pressed low over the city. By mid-afternoon, the clouds broke into a full snowstorm. Heavy flakes whipped sideways by the wind. I should have canceled, should have stayed home, but I couldn't. We needed the money too badly. And this job promised better pay than the hotel, so I bundled myself into my old coat, kissed Ethan and Sophie goodbye, and hurried into the cold. By the time I reached downtown, the streets were nearly deserted. Snow piled against the sidewalks. Cars crawled forward with hazard lights blinking. and the icy wind cut at my cheeks like knives. I clutched my bag close to my chest, the fear of arriving late gnawing at me. I couldn't afford another failure. As I turned a corner, I spotted an elderly man struggling through the storm. His coat was too thin, his hat pulled low, his small suitcase dragging behind him with every step. He looked like the wind might knock him over at any moment. Something inside me clenched. I couldn't just walk past. "Sir," I shouted over the wind. "Do you need help?" He turned, his face weathered and weary. "Train station," he called back. "Need to get to the station." The snow stung my eyes, but I nodded. The station was miles away. He'd never make it on foot. I waved frantically until the one cab in sight slowed and pulled over. The old man hesitated at the door, fumbling with his wallet, his hands shaking. I don't have enough," he muttered. Embarrassment painted across his face. Without thinking, I pressed a few crumpled bills into the driver's hand. "I'll cover it." The man looked at me, startled, then softened with gratitude. "You didn't have to?" "I know," I said. "But I wanted to." He nodded, fumbling in his pocket before scribbling an address onto a scrap of paper. "At least take this. Come by sometime. I'll repay you." I tucked the paper into my coat pocket, too cold and too rushed to think much of it. "Just get warm," I told him, closing the cab door. The car disappeared into the storm, leaving me alone in the swirling white. My hair clung damp to my face. I realized then that the interview was slipping through my fingers. The restaurant was across town, and I was already too late. Still, as I trudged toward the bus stop, a strange warmth settled in my chest by the time I finally made it home. The storm still howled outside, my feet numb, my interview long missed. I should have felt defeated, but instead I sat by the window with Sophie curled against me, Ethan quietly reading nearby, and for once, I let myself breathe. I hadn't landed the job. I hadn't solved any of our problems, but I had done one good thing that day. And in a life so often defined by exhaustion and failure, that small act of kindness gave me a fleeting piece of peace. A few days passed. I nearly forgot about the scrap of paper shoved into my coat pocket. Life left little room for remembering anything beyond the next bill, the next shift, the next argument with Ashley. So when a knock came at the door that Saturday afternoon, I wasn't prepared for who stood on the other side. It was him, the old man from the blizzard, this time steady on his feet, wrapped in a heavier coat. But it wasn't him who stole my breath. It was the man standing beside him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes I knew too well. Eyes I had once dreamed about, eyes I had tried for 17 years to forget. My heart lurched. In an instant, I was 18 again, standing outside the community college, laughing as he brushed snow from my hair. "Linda." His voice was lower now, roughened by time, but it still wrapped around me like a melody I'd once memorized. I gripped the doorframe, forcing myself to breathe. "Daniel." Ashley appeared in the hallway, drawn by curiosity. Her eyes flicked from me to him, confusion painted across her face. "Mom, who is this?" My mouth went dry. The room tilted. For years, I had built walls around this secret, swearing it would never surface. But here he was, standing in my doorway, and Ashley's eyes so much like his searched mine for answers I could no longer hide. "This is Daniel Hayes," I said at last, my voice breaking. I faltered, swallowing hard. "Your father." The word hung heavy in the air. Ashley's face drained of color. "What? No. Dad was Mark." She shook her head violently. "What are you talking about?" I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Ashley, please. I never meant for you to find out like this. There are things you don't know, things I should have told you long ago." Daniel's father cleared his throat softly. "It's time, Linda. Let her hear it." I sank into a chair, my legs too weak to hold me. The words spilled out, bitter and heavy, scraping against old wounds. How Daniel and I had fallen in love when we were young. How his mother despised me, called me unworthy, and tore us apart. How she lied to him, told him I had left him for someone else. How she threatened and manipulated me until I disappeared from his life pregnant alone. Daniel's jaw tightened as I spoke, his fists clenched at his sides. "She told me you ran off," he said hoarsely. "She told me you didn't love me." Tears blurred my vision. "I never stopped loving you. But I had no choice. I had to protect myself. And later, I had to protect Ashley." Ashley stood frozen, wide-eyed, her chest rising and falling quickly. "So all this time, you lied to me." You let me think Mark was my dad, when it was him. She jabbed a finger toward Daniel, her voice breaking with fury and disbelief. I wanted to keep you safe, I whispered. I thought the truth would only hurt more. Her face twisted, torn between rage and shock. She turned away, pacing the small room like a caged animal. The fragile piece of peace we had begun to rebuild shattered instantly. I sat there, my heart aching with guilt, watching my daughter wrestle with the truth I had spent half my life burying. The silence felt endless. Finally, Daniel stepped forward, his voice low and steady. Ashley, he said, his eyes locked on hers. I didn't know. I swear it. If I had known you existed, nothing could have kept me away. I can't change the years we lost, but if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Ashley's lips trembled. She tried to mask it with anger. You expect me to just believe that? That you would have been there? Yes, Daniel answered simply. Because I see you now. And I see her. He gestured toward me, his voice softening. I know what Linda and I had. I know what was stolen from us. Please give me a chance. For the first time in years, Ashley's defenses cracked. Her eyes filled with tears. She turned away quickly, swiping at her cheeks. I don't know if I can forgive either of you, she whispered, but I'm tired of being angry all the time. Her words split something open in me. I wanted to rush forward, to hold her, but I stayed still. Slowly, Ashley came back to the table and sat down. She didn't look at me. Not yet. But she didn't turn away either. That was enough. For now, over the weeks that followed, a fragile truce began to form. Daniel visited often, sometimes with his father, sometimes alone. He didn't push Ashley, he just showed up. He listened when she spoke, gave her space when she needed it. Little by little, her walls lowered. At home. The sharp edges softened. Ashley still bristled, still threw barbs, but they no longer carried the venom they once did. Once, she even helped Ethan with his homework without being asked. Sophie, thrilled to have her sister's attention again, followed her around like a shadow. One evening, as we cleared the table together, Ashley muttered almost too quietly, "Your cooking's not that bad." It wasn't an apology, but it was a step. And I clung to it like a lifeline. Lying in bed that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, exhaustion pulling at me, something stirred beneath it. For so long, my life had felt like nothing but loss, betrayal, his death, Ashley's anger, the endless grind of survival. But now, for the first time in years, I felt something else, possibility. Renewal. Daniel's presence couldn't erase the past. Ashley's wounds wouldn't heal overnight. My burdens hadn't vanished. But I wasn't alone anymore, and maybe that was enough to begin again. I closed my eyes, whispering a silent prayer of gratitude. Whatever came next, I believed we could face it together. Because family wasn't only about what we'd lost, it was about what we still had the courage to build.